gesturing for the president-elect to get into the limousine.
This is one of those moments in history. There will be so many photographs of this day, of all of these moments.
It's one of the most obvious examples of the peaceful transition of power that Americans take so much pride in.
4 years ago this week, and things may look a little different for the inauguration this time around. Let's bring in our panel right now. Jennifer Wagner, Mike Murphy, Robin Winston, and Tony Samuel. Let's start with Jennifer Wagner, the former communications director for the Indiana Democrats. Jennifer, after the insurrection, the impeachment, now an inauguration, how might this all play out here these next few days?
Well, I think, some of it's still yet to be known, even though we're just a few days away from the big day. But it sure isn't going to feel or look anything like it did 4 years or 8 years ago, not just because of COVID, but because you've got the president who's going to be hightailing it out of D.C. the morning of the first sitting president not to attend an inauguration. Vice President Pence will be there, and that's great. But I think there's just going to be a lot of unrest, nervousness around this particular occasion, which is a real shame because this is supposed to be a happy day, a peaceful transition of power, something that everyone can look forward to, a speech likely to be remembered, but there's a lot different this year about this occasion.
Let's turn to Tony Samuel now, 2016 vice chair for the Indiana Trump campaign. I want to get your thoughts on the impeachment process here, but also, Tony, the president, he has promised a peaceful transfer of power here in recent days, but couldn't the case be made this already has not been a peaceful transfer of power?
Oh, some are saying that, but remember, he had every right, and it's been done before as far as challenging and questioning the results because there were so many discrepancies and irregularities, and he had every right, and then at the right time, he said that, that's it, and we're going to have a peaceful transfer of power, and you'll see that. As far as the impeachment goes, since you asked, again, the Democrats were wanting to do this from day one. They made those statements clear when he was inaugurated, and every week and month since, and you're seeing from the Department of Justice the release of documents from the Russia hoax when it started, and you're seeing that there were lies and fraud committed and the FISA court was lied to. So it's been 4 years of attacks on this president. He's done a tremendous job moving his agenda, and you've seen a lot of hate from the left. And I, for one, am ready to move on. One thing that we've done is we needed a puppy.
We all need puppies after everything we've been through.
That I stay calm. And
there
actually,
you go.
It's the kid's Christmas present. This is Luna. That's Noah, and of course Lily.
We're glad to meet. We all need a little calm, right? A little puppy love after everything we've endured here in recent weeks and months. Tony, thanks. Let's turn now to former state party chair Robin Winston, who played a leading role in the Biden campaign here in Indiana. Robin, how do you think this impeachment trial should be handled? We know there won't be puppies there. It's going to be certainly a serious situation in the nation's capital. Will this interfere, though, with the transition process, confirmation hearings for cabinet members like Pete Buttigieg, the new attorney general, others who still have to be confirmed?
I certainly hope not. I just think back if we had Donald Trump say that about a peaceful transition when he was at the ellipse, we may not have had what you saw as an insurrection that you defined as such. The bottom line is that he has been impeached twice. The Senate's not going to touch this, I don't believe, before Inauguration Day. But the other I, because a lot of your words were, talking about things that are going down the line, the biggest I word is illness. We've got to do something to address the COVID-19 pandemic. President Biden's laid out a clear plan for that, a comprehensive plan. First time we've seen a comprehensive plan across the board that touches so many areas. I hope that he'll reiterate that during his inauguration. As far as profiles and courage, Mike Pence should have a chapter in the book because he's going to stand there and be the epitome of a peaceful transition of power.
All right, finally, former state lawmaker Mike Murphy. Mike, you represent part of the Republican Party that wants to move forward from this Trump era. How should Mitch McConnell proceed here, in your view? Vice President Pence ruling out the 25th Amendment, but McConnell not ruling out conviction yet.
Well, you have to go back. I think you have to back up to last week. And I love Tony's comments, and I can't see his hands because they're below the screen, but I'm hoping his fingers are crossed while he was saying all those things, because Trump certainly had a right to challenge the vote. He did not have the right to incite an insurrection against the federal government, and that's why he was impeached again, not because he tried to exercise his right to challenge the vote. It's important to mention. McConnell has said this afternoon that the vote of his Republican individual members of his caucus will be a vote of conscience. He is not going to stand in their way as a kind of a caucus lock, as we would call it. So I think the process will move forward either on the 20th or shortly thereafter. And, you know, we have no idea what's going to happen. But I want to agree with our former Democratic chairman here. Mike Pence is an American hero. His stock has skyrocketed in the last week. And what I like to say is people who say he wasn't courageous, you know, until the last minute. Well, I kind of compare that to the soldier who hunkers down in his foxhole for the first few hours of battle and then gets tired of it, goes out, kills 100 members of the enemy, and wins the Medal of Honor. No matter what, he's still a Medal of Honor winner.
Jennifer, more broadly, as we look back at these last 4 years, what have we learned about the way we talk about and think about our politics in these very divided times?
Well, I'm not sure we've actually learned the lesson yet. And it's kind of hard to look back beyond the past 4 weeks, to be honest with you, Dan. I think we've got a lot of that soul searching yet to do. And I do feel like, you know, kind of looking at different national polls and just talking to people, being on social media, that there's going to be a chance on Wednesday for us to catch our collective breath, to take that moment to pause and to have those conversations moving forward. And I know I'm maybe a little Pollyanna-ish when it comes to this, but I don't think that the American people want to continue the rancor and the chaos that we've endured for these last 4 years. I think people want to move on. That doesn't mean we're going to be able to find common ground on everything. But if the four of us can sit here and have this conversation week after week and disagree on fundamental values, but still agree on things that are important to us as a nation and a state, then I have to believe that the rest of us can do that too.
All right. We're at the state level this week as well. Some news to talk about. Governor Holcomb delivering his State of the State, obviously still in the midst of this pandemic. Also, a lot of back and forth this week about the mask mandate at the State House after a committee hearing where a number of people were not in masks. Tony, when it comes to the governor's State of the State, when it comes to the pandemic, when it comes to issues facing Indiana, what kind of message are you hoping to hear?
A very positive message. You'll see a good report on our fiscal state on the budget. The governor released some of those details earlier this week, and so that's very positive. It'll be uplifting, and I'm sure he'll obviously have a lot to say about our attacking the COVID pandemic and the progress that we're making there.
Robin, what do you hope to hear from the governor on Tuesday night?
Well, once again, remember, he got elected, but his opponent got about 12% of the vote, basically running on a platform of, I don't believe there should be mask mandates. So let's commend Governor Holcomb for doing what's in our public's best interest and protecting the health of our public. I hope that he will also stress that education funding should not be cut during this budget, and that we will continue to provide the tools necessary to move our state forward and protect our school children.
Robin, thanks. It's a great segue there, because coming up next this Sunday in Focus, we're going to be talking about Indiana schools as the governor lays out that budget plan. Educators also are asking when they'll be able to get the vaccine.